So yeah, Sally Spiegel filling for Kravkin, 8th day of Hanukkah. So right, so we're by the Mishnah bottom of Chavav Amim Beis. Ayol Kariv Be'echad. Also, the ayol is brought with 11 kohanim. Habasar Chamisha. So 11 kohanim are split up as follows: the basar is brought in by 5 kohanim. Ha-kravayim, the innards, v'ha-soiles, v'ha-yayin, and the flour and the wine. B'shnayim are 2 apiece. And this is more than the previous Mishnah about the Tamid, because for an ayil you have double amount of the Yisroinim of Silas. Here you have 2 instead of the 1 for a lamb. And for also the yayin, the nesachim, there is a shlishis hin, a third of a hin, as opposed to a quarter of a hin by the tamid, which is a lamb. So you need more kohanim. And par karev be'esrim v'arba, so a bull is brought with 24 kohanim. Harish for regel, and they're brought in as follows. So the reish and the regel, they're brought together. So Harish be'echad ve'regel be'shnayim. So the Reish is 1 person, 1 kohen, the regel is 2. That's the right back leg. Ha'ukatz ve'regel, the ukatz, the tail, and the left back leg. Ha'ukatz be'shnayim ve'regel be'shnayim. Also the ukatz, the tail is 2, the regel is 2. We're up to 7 now. Ha'chazeh ve'ha'geira, the breast and the geira, which is the neck. Hachazah be'echad v'geira b'shleisha, the breast is with 1, the geira the neck is with 3, that's 11. Shtei yadais, 2 forelegs, b'shnayim, that's another 2, that's 13. Shtei defanais b'shnayim, and the 2 flanks with 2, that's 15. And the last 9, hakravayim v'asaylis v'yayin, the insides, the flour and the wine, b'shleisha is 3 apiece. And also here by a par, it's also more than that of an ayil. It's 3 Yisroinim of Silas, and it's a half a hin of wine. Okay, so this is all by Karbanis Tzibur. Aval b'Karban Yachid im Rasel Hakriv Makiv. If the kohen who is doing the avodah wants to bring it all of it himself, he could. And Hafshetan v'nituchan shel elu ve'elu shavin, and the skinning the animal and the cutting it up, both of Korbanos Tzibur, Korbanos Yachid, you could do it with a zar. You don't even have to have a kohen doing it. Okay. So the Gemara says, Tana it was taught Hafshetan v'nituchan shavin bizar. They're both equivalent. That you could both do with a non-kohen. Where do we know this from? The Bnei Aaron will place the Eish al HaMizbeach. Nesinas Eish Baya Kuna. So the Josh is that we need a Nesinas Eish. The Kohanim need to place the fire on the Mizbeach. But another, which implies that there's an exclusion of another avodah done with the korban, meaning the hefshet, the skinning and the cutting up, which does not need a kohen.
How does the Yisrael get there? How does he get there, the Yisrael, to do this?
So either they bring the animal to him on the edge of the zara, or there was an area he could go on the edge, meaning as we said before, by the during the regels is along the sides of the Zara. The Zara is filled with Yisraelim. So it could be, we're speaking about then, and he was, if you look at the diagram, the side of the Zara goes right next to the tables of the, not right next to them, but close to the area where they skinned it. So he get close enough so they could bring it over to him. Admittedly, it's, you're not allowed to go into the Zara proper, but you... Okay. Yeah, so... It's mostly theoretical. It could happen, but didn't usually. So... Fine. So Gemara says, Haimi Bayi Lagufe. Question is, you need this pasuk v'nasnu bnei Aaron hakoyin eish on the mizbeach, to tell you that the kohanim bring the eish on the mizbeach, you need that for itself, meaning that's a chiddush. We would not have known it without the pasuk. So Amar of Simi Bar Ashi. So Simi Bar Ashi says as follows: Hashchachte leBAYT to have a masber le lebrei. I saw Abai who was explaining this drasha. What do we know? How do we get from Menachem Aryai to tell you that nituach, that the hefshet of nituach is kasher with the zar? He was explaining it to his son. He was explaining the whole drasha as follows: V'shachat shechita. So the pasuk says v'shachat. That's ben amakar l'fnei Hashem. So v'shachat shechita b'zar kshera. We darshan that a shechita with a zar is kosher, because at the end of the pasuk it says by kohen, over at the beginning it does not. V'chi me'ayin basa. So Gemara asks the question. In fact, where would you think to say that in fact a zar cannot do the shechita? So Gemara says miklal shneimar, because I would have thought, since it's implied from the fact that it says "V'atov vanecha itecha tishmeru es gunaschem," and the Bach ends in "L'chol devar hamizbeach," for everything done to the mizbeach. It says you and your sons, speaking to Aaron HaKohen, you'll guard your kahuna. So Shemei Ani afilu shchita, I would have thought even the shchita, which is also part of the devar hamizbeach, is included. Talmud Lamer v'shachat es ben abakar l'fnei Hashem v'ikrivu b'nei Aharon HaKohenim es hadam, that the end of the pasuk, the next part of the pasuk says, "V'shachas ben abakar l'fnei Hashem v'ikrivu b'nei Aharon HaKohenim es hadam," that they'll do the shechita in front of Hashem, and then the b'nei Aharon HaKohenim will bring the dam. Meaning, it only mentions b'nei Aharon HaKohenim by the hakrava, which starts from, as the Gemara says, "Mikabala ve'elach mitzvahs kahuna," meaning the mitzvah of the kohanim, the avodah, only starts with the blood, not with the shechita. And only from the accepting the blood and carrying it to the mizbeach and sprinkling it on the mizbeach, the last three avodas need a kohen. The shechita does not. Okay. Then you have the other question also: how do you shecht the animal? If you can't go into the zar, it has to be shecht in the zar. Okay. So they ask the question. Okay. So either you have a very long knife, could be. That is the one answer they say. Fine. So v'shachat, and so we darshan v'shachat limit al shechita shekshera b'zar, that v'shachat without, and v'samach yodai v'shachat, you stick out your hand and you shecht. It shows you kosher with the zar, from the fact that it did not mention a kohen at this point in the pasuk yet. So, in fact, v'samach yodai is actually the pasuk before. So really the drasha would be that the pasuk before, speaking about the owner, V'smach Yodai, he does the smicha, and the next words are in this pasuk is v'shachat. So the drasha would actually be that just like the smicha is done by the owner who's not a kohen, who doesn't have to be a kohen, so too the shechita could also be done by someone who is not a kohen. So Gemara says, "Michti, let us see, mikabala ve'elach mitzvahs kahuna." So Kabbalah and onwards, the avodah of a animal is done by kohanim, implying the Kabbalah, the accepting of the blood, the halacha, the bringing to mizbeach, the zrika, the sprinkling it, and not only that, also implied is the putting the bones on the mizbeach, bringing them up the ramp, putting them on the mizbeach. So, and also, assumingly putting the fire on the mizbeach too. And therefore, v'nasnu b'nei Aharon hakohen eish, the bachazin. So lamali. So why do you need that pasuk to tell you that the kohen has to put the fire on the mizbeach? It's implied from that's an avodah from the Kabbalah, from after the Kabbalah. So it's implied that you need a kohen anyway. Why do you need the pasuk? So Gemara says lemeute hefshet v'nituach, because it's coming to exclude hefshet v'nituach, the skinning and the cutting up into pieces, because that is also after the Kabbalah, after the Kibbutz Adam, after the Shechita. So it would be implied that also that hefshet v'nituach has to be done by Kohen also. That's why. So therefore, when the pasuk says v'nasnu b'nei Aharon hakohen eish, that the Kohanim have to put the fire on the mizbeach, it's coming to exclude another avodah done to the korban. So we say that's the hefshet v'nituach. Okay, so Gemara says, "Vakati itzrich," I still No, I still need that pasuk, even though it's after the Kabbalah. It's from the Kabbalah and onwards. Still, you need the pasuk for itself to tell you that only a kohen could put the fire on the mizbeach. So, because Sakadai Chamina, I would have thought, given the lava avoida dem akva kaparahi, since it's not putting the fire on the mizbeach, is not an avoida having to do with the kapara. A kapara is only brought about through the avoida hadam, the Kabbalah Haylach and the Zrika. So I would have thought only those three avodas have to be done by a kohen. But putting the fire on the mizbeach, I would have thought you do not have to have a kohen do it. So Kamash Malan, that no a kohen, the BAYT kahuna, they need a kohen. Ela Mehacha, so rather, now we're back to the drawing board. Where do we know that Hefshit Vinituach does not have to be done by a kohen? So Gemara says, Ela Mehacha, rather from here, Ve'arechu b'nei Aharon hanim es hanasachim, they arrange the pieces as haraish ves, a part of the head and the fat. So Mechti, let us see, Mikabala ve'elach mitzvahs kahuna. So, like we said, from Kabbalah and onwards, you need the mitzvah is to be done with the kohanim. Va'arechu lamli, so why do you need va'arechu? So, and Rashi adds in, and don't tell me that it's not me'akiv in the kapara, because we already know that even an avodah that's not me'akiv in the kapara has to be done with by a kohen also, as we found by the putting the fire on the mizbeach. So, what's va'arechu coming to teach you? So Gemara says, it must be coming to tell us that putting them on the mizbeach, you do not need a kohen. You need a kohen, sorry, but to skinning it and to cutting it up into those pieces. So they're right before that. You do not need a kohen. So Gemara says, maybe it's coming to exclude the arranging of the two gzirei eitzim, and in fact, even though there's no way for Azar to do it without actually being on the mizbeach itself. So in fact, really, Azar would never be allowed to do it. So in fact, the chiddush is that the avodah would be kosher, not that the Azar is allowed to do it. So you might think it's coming to be memayit, arranging the two blocks of wood.
That's actually say something about Beinu Abayim.
Yeah.
And not Safon.
Yeah, because in the morning the pasuk says beferish that you have to has to be done by a kohen. In Beinu Abayim it doesn't say it. It doesn't say a kohen has to put on do the siddur hamaracha. Only in the morning.
Did we learn yesterday that they added that to the afternoon service for the kohen?
Yeah, that's right.
So isn't it?
No,
against what we're just saying now.
This is working out the drasha how.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you more time.
Yeah, no. The Gemara's going to say, even though it was said yesterday, that it had to be done by a kohen, but we're working out the drashas now. Okay. I mean, I think one before yesterday was discussing the avodah. Now we're discussing how do we know it had to be done by a kohen specifically. Okay, so. So maybe I would have thought to exclude that the siddur shnei gzirei eitzim, that if a zar did it, it's still kosher. If he arranged the two blocks of wood on the mizbeach, the final step of arranging the maracha, again, like you said, in the evening. So Gemara says, Mistaber, no, it's more logical. Divcha dichvas mimayt. We're excluding something to do with the divcha. Aramaic, the dalet and zayin are usually interchangeable, so that's a zevach. Something that it says an avodah with the kohen, avodah with that the kohen has to do with the zevach, with the korban. Sorry, so it's implied that it's coming to exclude something which is done with the korban. So in other words, if the pasuk says va'archu that he has to arrange the nesachim on the mizbeach, it implies that another avodah done with the korban, in other words, the nituach and the hefshit b'nituach, does not have to be done with the kohen. So Gemara says, Adarabba, on the contrary, siddur dechvase mimayit, that this is siddur, this is arranging things on the mizbeach. So two is arranging the two blocks of wood on the mizbeach. So I would have thought that this siddur of arranging the nisachim on the mizbeach has to be done by kohen, but not the siddur of the two blocks of wood. So Gemara says, Lo yisakadar daitach, don't think that it can't be true. The Amar Mar v'hikriv hakohen is hakoil hamizbecha. Pasuk says Kohen will bring everything onto Mizbeach, and we darshan zu ha'leches evarim lakevesh. This is bring the evarim to the kevesh, and the diuk is as follows: ha'leches evarim lakevesh hu dibayik huni. We see we need a Kohen to bring the evarim to the kevesh. Ha'leches eitzim lo'bayik huna would imply that bring the wood up to the kevesh, up to the Mizbeach, so you do not need a Kohen. And the fact that we have to be BAYT, the bringing of the wood to the Mizbeach, that's kosher if it's not done by a Kohen, implies that Hasidur Shnei Gezirei Eitzim, that actually arranging the Maracha itself, the arranging the last two Gezirei Eitzim by a Kohen, implying that does need a Kohen. So we...
but this is in the middle of the Zara.
For sure.
So how can a non-Kohen even get there?
He can't. But the point is, you would have thought that if he does it, then the Vayda is at least kosher.
I think the one explanation is they keep standing outside with a very long...
No, 1 second.
Yeah, and do the shkita.
No. So the
No, not the shkita now. We're talking about carrying the wood. Carrying the wood.
I thought it was shkita.
Carrying the wood.
No, I'm talking about bringing the wood onto the...
Yeah.
Very long wood.
So in fact he can't. But the point is that the question is if he did it, is it Vayda kosher?
Hypothetically.
So, is that still going against what we said yesterday, that the Kohen is supposed to carry it?
No, so we just said now that a Kohen has to do it. But
no, it said the Kohen has to arrange it on the fire.
Yeah.
But a non-Kohen can bring it up the ramp.
Actually, it's actually to the ramp, not really up the ramp.
To the ramp.
Meaning it's really two of it. You bring all the wood to the base of the ramp, and you to the kevesh to the ramp, and then you bring it up.
Oh, so that's still then.
Bring it up.
Bring it up. The Kohen still has to do.
Different Kohen.
Yeah.
It's a different Kohen.
Yeah. No, but we're saying that. All we see from here is that that only a non-Kohen could only bring it to the mizbeach, not arrange it on the mizbeach. So. Yeah. So okay. So we're up to sorry, lost the place. Okay. Fine. So Gemara says va'archu lamali. So therefore, what do we need va'archu for? Lemu'utei hefshit v'nituach. Must be for hefshit v'nituach. So here there's a whole question here. So I'll go with the Bach. It's easiest to read. So ve'ima legufayu. Maybe all the psukim that we had until now we need for their own chiddush, for themselves, not for an extra drasha. So the Bach Sker says as follows. So v'hikriv, he starts off v'hikriv hakohen sakoil hamizbecha. The kohen will bring everything to the mizbech. Zu hayleches evarim lakevesh. That's bringing the evarim to the kevesh. The kevesh who debayik kahuna. So only bringing it to the ramp needs a kohen. Hayleches eitzim loy bayik kahuna. But so that's the evarim needs the limbs. Bring that to mizbech needs a kohen, but not the wood. Hasidur Shnei Gezirei Eitzim by Gehuna, but imply that the arranging of the two Gezirei Eitzim on the Mizbeach needs a Kohen. Okay, and that's the V'hikriv. And V'nasnu Lagufei, and V'nasnu, as we said also, placing the Eish on the Mizbeach, you need it for itself. You need, the Chiddush is that it has to be done by a Kohen, because you would have thought that since it's not Me'akiv in the Avodah, so maybe a Yisrael could do it. So Pasuk says V'nasnu, know that a Kohen has to put the Eish on the Mizbeach. And ve'archu also, we need a drasha for itself, as follows: ve'archu shnayim, because ve'archu is plural, so it has to be at least two. Bnei Aharon shnayim, Bnei Aaron is also plural, so we see also another two. Hakohanim shnayim, so that's the drasha ve'archu Bnei Aaron hakohanim. That's two for each word or group of words. The laman we learn from here, letlesh heto and shisha, that a lamb of the tumah needs 6, even though we said before it needs 9 at least. So that's the 6 are for the basar and the kravayim, not for the not including the chavitin, the yayin, and the silas. So okay, those are the other 3. So the tumah itself, for the animal itself, you need 6. So Amar from Nuna. Oh, sorry, and then the Bach finishes off, and so Gemara says, in fact, could be you're right. Could be it's true that all those psukim you need for themselves to teach you a chiddush those psukim themselves. Ela v'hiktir hakoyin is a koil l'mayasa. So why do we need v'hiktir hakoyin is a koil? That is part of the avodah, and what Chiddush could have possibly be telling us. So Gemara says, so that must be coming to tell you that the haktara, the burning on the mizbeach, you need a koyin, but not the hefshet v'nituach. Okay, so now we go on. So Amar from Nuna, Kasha Leili Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar had a kasha. Hi ben habakar ksiv. This pasuk is not speaking about a tle; it's speaking about ben habakar. Ben habakar l'fnei Hashem. So how could we darshan that you need 6 for the tle of the Talmud? Is speaking about a ben habakar. Ben habakar esmu varba, you need 24 for any cattle. So v'nichle, and then he answered it, meaning he had a question. Rabbi Elazar had the question, then he answered it for himself. Al ha'itzim asher al ha'esh asher al mizbeach. The pasuk had already said originally. The pasuk before, actually, this is pasuk Zayin. It says v'nasnu bnei Aaron hakayin eish al mizbeach v'arechu eitzim al ha'esh. Sorry, pasuk Zayin was they will put eish al mizbeach and v'arechu eitzim al ha'esh. So what are we? So this is pasuk Ches. Why are we repeating al ha'etzim asher al ha'esh asher al mizbeach? We had just said in the previous pasuk. So what's it coming to tell us? So al ha'etzim asher al ha'esh asher al mizbeach. The drasha is as follows: that Esahu davar shnemer by eitzim eish umizbeach. What thing, for which korban do we need to arrange the wood, the fire, and the mizbeach? So Gemara says, "Havi Omer zetleh." So I'll tell you, this is the tleh. So the aloitzim asher aloish asher al hamizbeach is all of this extra. It's coming to tell you that these psukim are referring to the Talmud, for which it is required to set up the ma'aracha at the beginning of the day. As the Rashi goes through the cheshbon, because it says ve'esh al mizbeach tukad bay, that you will have fire that's tukad bay, referring to the ma'aracha, and the pasuk says ubiyarla hakain itzim b'bayker v'rechale ha'ayla, and the drasha is ha'ayla, referring to the first ayla, meaning the Talmud. That it has to be on that you need a ma'aracha for it, and that's the first korban of the day. So we see you need a ma'aracha for the Talmud. Okay, so Amar Rabbi Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, Zar Shasidas Hamaracha Chayev. So a Zar who sets up the ma'aracha is Chayev Misa, and even though the Gemara back on Chaf Daled actually said that it's not in avodah tama because there's an avodah afterwards, the shnei gziri eitzim, still though the Gemara had a different question. So okay, so Gemara says Ketzad huaisa. So what should he do? Parka, he should take it apart and set it up again. So Gemara says, "My honey, what will it help him? If he can't set up the first time, he can take it apart and put it back together." Ela parka zar v'saydra koyin. So rather, what all the zar could do is take it apart again and let the koyin set it up again, since the avodah is possible if he did it. So maskef lo Rabbi Zera v'chiyeish l'cha avodah shekshera b'layla upsula b'zar. Is there any avodah that's kosher at night and puzzle with a zar? So the Gemara says v'loy. There isn't varei avarim updarim. Putting the avarim, the limbs and the fats on the mizbeach, is done at night, and it's possible with the zar. So Gemara says, that's the end of the avodah of the day. That's the end of the avodah of the karbanos, which is actually an avodah hayayim. So Gemara says, there's trumas hadeshin, which is done, which could be done at night. So Gemara says, chilas avodah diyam mahi. That's considered the beginning of the day of the avodah of the day. If you washed your hands in the kir, if you're mekadesh them, your hands for Trumas Hadeshin, so Lamachar the next day in the morning, you don't have to do it again. You already mekadesh them at the beginning of the avodah. Even though in the Chaf Beis, actually, beginning of the parak, we were madcha this. We said could be you should read it mitchila le'avodah, but that's only a decoy. That's the pashup shot of reading it is as we have it, mitchilas avoda, that it is the beginning of the avodas of the day. So ve'elo kasha. So if so, you're back to our original question of Rabbi Zera: is there an avoda which is kosher at night and possible with izar? So elo ki yitmar hachimar. Rather, if we're going to
So what's the point of the washing of the hands now?
Just to show you that the Trumas Hadeshin is the first avodah of the day. It's not considered a night avodah.
Okay.
It's a day avodah.
And why wouldn't he wash his hands the next day?
Not because he already did it.
And the night doesn't consider it. Like, it's the beginning of new days and new avodah. So
that's exactly the point.
Right,
Meaning that's the fact they did it at night for the Trumas Hadeshin. That shows it's an avodah of the day. And therefore,
that's continuing from the day.
Yeah.
Is what continuation from the day?
It's a continuation from the night to the day. Yeah. So in fact, the fact that he was Mekayish Yadav.
So there's no hefsek, in other words.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, right.
So the fact they did for the Trumas Hadeshin is enough for.
Right.
Okay. Is enough for the next day also. Mm-hmm. So Elakiyid Marhachid Marel, if we're going to say it like this. Amar Ravasi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, that Ravasi Amar Yochanan says as follows: Zor Shesider Shnei Gziri Eitzim, which, as we said, makes more sense anyway because it's the last avodah of setting up the Ma'aracha. So the Azar who sets up the two Gziri Eitzim, the two blocks of wood, Chayav is Chayav Misa. Hayil Vavodas Yom Hi, it's avodah of the day. So Maskefla Rava had a big question on this. Elamiyata, if we're saying that it's a avodah has to be done by the day, and it's an avodah which Azor is Chayav Misa for. So we see so chashuv. So going back to the beginning of the parak again. So if so, tibai pais, you should need a pais. You should have to have a lot for it. So Gemara says Ishtamitzei, at the time Rava asked the question, he had temporarily, it wasn't in front of him. He had temporarily forgotten it. He wasn't thinking of it at the time. Hadatanya, that which is said in the Brisa, Misha Zacha b'Trumas Hadeshin Yizka b'Sidur Maracha b'Sidur Shnei Gziri Eitzim. In fact, there is a pious for it. It's included in the pious for the Trumas Hadeshin. You also get the the Maracha and the two Gziri Eitzim too. So Gemara says the Memra the Avodah Yaim Baya Pious Avodah Laila Loi Baya Pious. Does this come into this mean that a Avodah Yaim needs a pious, Avodah Laila does not need a pious? From the fact that Rava asked the question that since it's so chashuv, that's avodas hayayim, so you need a pious. So Gemara says, "Varei avarim u'pedarim, they have a pious, and that's done at night, putting the limbs and the fat on the mizbeach." So Gemara answers, "Saif avoda the yom-mahi." That's the end of the avoda of the day. That's again avoda done with the korban, so it's called a day avoda. The yom-mahi. So Gemara says, "Varei Trumas Hadeshin." It's a Trumas Hadeshin which could be done at night. And in fact, here we can answer it's the beginning of the day avodah of the day because it's dependent on how the kohanim look at it. If the kohanim view it as a avodas halayla, since you started it at night, so in fact that they don't consider it chashuv enough, and therefore you do not need a pious. So the Gemara says, and it's going back to the beginning of the parak again. So Mishum Ma'aser Shahaya, the reason why they had it was because of a Ma'aser Shahaya, a Chaim who had his leg broken. So they were misaking that you do that with a pious. Okay, so then the Gemara says also Lememra da avodas yom shezar chayiv aleh misa by a pious. Does this mean to say that an avodas hayom that a zar is chayiv misa on it? You need a pious again, since Rav asked the question elamiyata. Now that we see any avodah that a zar is chayav misa for, and it's an avodas hayom, so you need a pious. So is that true? So, however, ein zar chayav aleh misa loich by a pious, implying though that if a zar is not chayav misa for it, so you do not need a pious. V'arei shchita, but we have shchita, which is kosher with a zar, and there is a pious, a lot for it. The Gemara says, "Shani shchita d'tchilas avoda." That's the beginning of the avoda. So it's looked at by the kohanim as a very chashuv avoda. It's the beginning of the day. It's the beginning of its set of avoda. And Tosha says also, so that's also why the dishon hamizbeach hapnimi, the Trumas Hadeshin of the inner mizbeach, and the cleaning out the menorah is also, there was a lot for it, even though there was a pious for it, even though it's not chayav misa for a zar. Still, the reason is because it's the beginning of the avoda, either of the mizbeach hapnimi or of the menorah. That's the first avodah. So even though a zar is not Chaim Misa for that, still they had a pious for it. So Amar Marzut Shavitim Ravashi Vahanan Loit Sanhachi, but we didn't learn that way in the Mishnah. We learned differently. Amar Lahem Hamemuna. The Memuna said to them, Im Higia Zaman Shchita, go and see if the time for Shchita has arrived yet on Yom Kippur. Coming up in the tomorrow's DAF. So Ve'ilu Zaman Shnei Gziri Eitzim like Katani. It didn't say come and see if it's time to put the 2 Gziri Eitzim on the Mizbech, implying that it did not have to be done during the day. So Gemara says Hach de leisla de kanta katani, hach de isla de kanta lai katani. That we only mentioned for the shchita because if you do the shchita at night during the wrong time, then you can't go back on the shchita. If you did the shnik ziriyim by mistake during the nighttime, you thought it was day, it was really night. You confuse the Gemara. The Mishnah is going to say an example. You confuse the sun, moonlight for the sun, so you could rearrange it during the day. It's not so bad if you did it at night because you could just redo it. In shechita you can't go back on. And so because of that, so they had to make sure it was daytime before they did the shechita.
Shkaya.